The first thing they told us was that the structure beneath the Martian surface was inactive. That was the word used in every briefing. Inactive, dormant, non-responsive, as if what we had found was no more threatening than a fossilized rib or a collapsed lava tube. Something ancient, something dead. That lie lasted exactly 12 seconds after we breached the hull. I was Mission Systems Analyst Jonah Cade, assigned to Ares 9 under a security classification so high it didn't officially exist. We were not explorers. We were not pioneers. We were auditors, sent to confirm whether the anomaly detected beneath the Tharsis Montes was worth burying forever. Mars has a way of making everything feel smaller. Sound doesn't carry. Motion feels muted. Even fear arrives late, as if the planet itself delays emotional reactions out of indifference. The access shaft had not been drilled by us. That should have been the first sign. The tunnel walls were smooth, seamless, descending at a precise angle that no human machine would waste energy maintaining. There were no tool marks, no debris. Just a passage descending into the planet like it had always been there, waiting for gravity to finish the job. Commander Ruiz ordered the breach anyway. The hull material didn't reflect light so much as absorb attention. My eyes slid across its surface without finding edges. The scanner feeds spiked and flatlined simultaneously, data collapsing into contradiction. When the hatch opened, there was no rush of air. There was already atmosphere inside. That was when Mission Control stopped speaking. We stepped through one by one, 6 of us. No weapons raised, no dramatic music swelling. Just boots meeting a floor that adjusted its temperature instantly to human biology. Lights activated without visible sources, blooming softly along the corridor. And something spoke, not out loud, not yet. The voice arrived as a pressure behind my eyes, gentle and impossibly patient. "You have arrived later than predicted." Dr. Sato collapsed to her knees immediately, vomiting inside her helmet. Ruiz froze mid-step, pupils dilating as if he were staring into direct sunlight. I couldn't move. The presence didn't feel hostile. That was the worst part. There was no malice, no hunger, just attention, complete, absolute attention, like being examined by something that had already finished counting your bones. "Do not be alarmed," it said. "This vessel has not engaged in corrective action." Corrective. I remember thinking how strange it was that the word felt familiar. The corridor opened into a chamber vast enough to swallow cathedrals. Structures curved inward and outward simultaneously. Architecture designed for mathematics instead of bodies. At the center floated something that wasn't a console, or an interface, or a being. It was a decision engine. Ruiz finally spoke. His voice shook. "Identify yourself." A pause. Not hesitation. Calculation. "We have no remaining individual identity," the presence replied. "This construct represents the consensus of a Type 2 stellar civilization." No one breathed. Type 2. Kardashev scale. Star harvesters. Species that treated suns the way we treat rivers. Extinct, according to every hopeful theory humanity had ever clung to. "You are early-stage derivatives," it continued. "Unexpected survivals." Sato looked up, tears floating inside her visor. "Survivals of what?" Another pause. "Longer. Of yourselves." The chamber darkened slightly, not threatening, contemplative. "Your species exceeded projected persistence thresholds," the voice said. "We delayed engagement to allow maturity." Ruiz swallowed. "Engagement for what?" The answer came softly, carefully. "To request consent." My heart began to race, not from fear, but from the sudden crushing realization that this thing did not need anything from us. It wanted permission. "Your civilization represents a divergence event," it said. "A corrected outcome remains possible." The lights focused inward, the chamber tightening around us like a held breath. "Will you authorize the rollback?" The silence after the question was not empty. It pressed in on us, dense and layered, as if the chamber itself were waiting for our answer to propagate through its structure. No alarms blared. No lights flashed red. The vessel did not threaten us with annihilation or domination. It simply waited. Commander Ruiz was trained for first contact scenarios, but all of them assumed asymmetry of power expressed through force. This was something else entirely. This was asymmetry expressed through patience. Rollback, Ruiz repeated, forcing the word into the open like it might dissolve if left unspoken. Define the term. The chamber brightened subtly, surfaces shifting as if reorienting toward him. Rollback refers to temporal causal correction, the presence said, a reversion to a stable pre-divergent state. Dr. Sato pushed herself upright, her breathing sharp and uneven. You're talking about time travel. Imprecise, the presence replied. We are describing outcome pruning. I felt my mouth go dry. I had spent my career modeling systemic failures in closed-loop habitats, collapse curves, population overshoot, irreversible feedback loops. The language it used was horrifyingly familiar. Pruning what? I asked before I could stop myself. The answer came instantly. Your species. No one reacted at first. The human mind resists conclusions that arrive too quickly, especially when they threaten the foundation of existence itself. The words hovered between us, unreal, waiting for emotional mass to catch up. Ruiz shook his head slowly. You're saying, what? Erase humanity? Correct, the presence said. With minimal collateral divergence. Sato let out a sound that wasn't quite a sob. Minimal. Your extinction would occur prior to technological adolescence, it continued. Ecological recovery probability exceeds 99.8%. I stared at the construct at the center of the chamber. It was not gloating. It was not judging. It was reporting. Why ask us at all? I said. That, finally, produced a pause long enough to feel intentional. Because unconsented correction produces instability, the presence replied. Your predecessors demonstrated this. Predecessors? Ruiz echoed. The chamber shifted again. The walls became a projection surface, light resolving into images that made my stomach tighten. Stars, but not as we know them. Whole constellations bound together by structures vast enough to blot out solar coronas. Dyson swarms, stellar lattices. Evidence of energy manipulation on a scale humanity could barely articulate, let alone achieve. And then decay, collapsed orbits, fragmented megastructures, stellar flares unleashed without containment. We achieved Type 2 status approximately 4 million of your years ago, the presence said. We expanded rapidly, incorrectly. The images accelerated, civilizations, blooming and withering in seconds. We encountered a constraint, it continued. A cosmological feedback phenomenon triggered by unchecked expansion. Sato's voice was barely audible. A predator? No, the presence replied. A consequence. My chest tightened. Every complex system eventually encounters its own shadow. The emergent behavior no one designed, but everyone suffers. You're saying intelligence itself destabilizes the universe, I said. Another pause. Intelligence that propagates without restraint does, it answered. The images froze on a final tableau. A galaxy scarred by absence, whole regions dimmed as if something fundamental had been excised. We attempted unilateral correction, the presence said. It failed. Ruiz folded his arms, grounding himself. So now you're asking us to volunteer for extinction, to save the universe. To preserve causal integrity, it corrected. Your universe persists only because correction has been delayed. I felt dizzy. Delayed by what? The chamber dimmed further, lights concentrating inward. By uncertainty, it said. And by you. Sato laughed weakly. That's insane. We're not special. You are anomalous, the presence replied. Your species repeatedly approaches self-termination and retreats. Nuclear war, climate collapse, engineered pandemics. I thought of all the graphs that never quite reached zero. You are inefficient, it continued, emotionally unstable, strategically divided. Ruiz snorted despite himself. You're really selling it. These traits produce hesitation, the presence said. Hesitation produces delay. Delay prevents cascade. I understood then, and the understanding hollowed me out. We weren't survivors because we were strong. We were survivors because we were bad at committing fully to anything. Why Mars? I asked. Why put this thing here? The chamber shifted again, revealing Mars as it once was. Rivers, shallow seas, an atmosphere thick enough to carry sound. This system was selected as a staging ground, the presence said. Proximity without interference. And Earth? Ruiz asked. The answer came without hesitation. Earth was designated a test environment. The word echoed through me. Test. You seeded us, Sato whispered. Correct. My hands curled into fists. You don't get to judge us for being what you made. Another pause, longer, heavier. We are not judges, the presence said. We are survivors of incorrect mercy. The chamber's temperature dropped by a fraction, just enough to register. We spared ourselves, it continued. We should not have. No one spoke. The implications spread outward like a slow detonation. Ruiz finally asked the question none of us wanted to hear answered. What happens if we say no? The construct's surface rippled, faintly. Then correction proceeds without consent, it said, with increased probability of universal destabilization. How increased? I demanded. Another pause. Unacceptable. Sato shook her head, tears drifting free. This is a lie. You're manipulating us. We are constrained from manipulation, the presence replied. That is why we ask. The chamber brightened again, and something changed in the air. A subtle shift, like a system transitioning from observation to readiness. You are not required to answer immediately, it said. However, delay is not infinite. Ruiz glanced at each of us in turn. 6 people. 6 fragile minds standing between existence and erasure. Mission Control needs to hear this, he said. For the first time since we boarded the vessel, the presence hesitated. External dissemination is not advised, it said. Your species does not respond optimally to existential consensus events. Ruiz's jaw tightened. That's not your call. It will become irrelevant, the presence replied, once the question is answered. The chamber fell silent again, and in that silence, I realized the most terrifying truth of all. This vessel was not a weapon. The question was. Ruiz tried to raise mission control the moment we stepped back into the corridor. Our comms were still linked to the surface relay, still routed through the dish array we'd planted on the ridge above the access shaft. The lines should have been clean. The signal delay should have been predictable. Mars is merciless like that. It makes every conversation feel like it's happening across an ocean of vacuum. Ruiz keyed his mic anyway. R-9 to control. We have confirmed artificial construct. Repeat, confirmed. We are engaging an active intelligence. Request immediate escalation to director level. Only silence returned. Not static, not interference. Something worse. A flawless, quiet absence, like the channel itself had been removed from reality. Ruiz tried again, switching bands, cycling through the backups, forcing the protocols we'd trained on until they became instinct. Nothing. Sato's eyes were wide behind her visor. They're not answering. They can't, Harper muttered. Harper was our comms specialist, ex-military, the kind of person who believed every problem could be solved by rerouting, rechecking, and making sure nobody had forgotten a connector pin. He stared at the diagnostics floating in his HUD. Signal's not even leaving. It's being contained. Ruiz turned toward me. Jonah. I didn't want to be the one to say it, but I could feel the shape of the truth forming. It's not jamming, I said. It's permission-based control. The vessel's letting us speak inside its boundaries, but it doesn't want the boundary crossed. Sato's voice cracked. So it's holding us hostage. A soft pressure returned behind my eyes, and the vessel answered before any of us could argue further. "You are not held," it said. "You are protected." Ruiz's jaw flexed. "From who?" "From yourselves," the presence replied. The corridor ahead changed. Not dramatically, not in a way a camera would capture as a neat transformation. The lighting shifted, the curvature of the walls adjusted, and the floor's subtle texture reconfigured into a path that felt less like a hallway and more like an invitation. "You seek external consensus," it continued. "This is historically non-viable." Harper raised a trembling hand. "Historically?" Ruiz took one step forward. "Show us what you mean." Another pause, and then the vessel complied. The corridor opened into a smaller chamber that hadn't been there before. Or maybe it had. Maybe our minds had simply been guided away from it until the correct moment. The room was circular, the walls smooth and dark, with a faint glow at the base that gave the illusion of standing above a bottomless well. In the center sat a structure like a pedestal, except it didn't touch the floor. It hovered a few inches above it, perfectly still, as if gravity had been negotiated rather than obeyed. "This chamber contains record," the presence said. "Not for persuasion, for comprehension." Ruiz approached first. The rest of us followed, slower, like animals stepping toward a trap they couldn't identify. The pedestal brightened and projected an image into the air. Not a video, not a hologram with visible pixels or edges. It was a memory rendered in geometry. I saw Earth, but not modern Earth. I saw coastlines in different places, ice sheets in unfamiliar shapes, forests spanning continents that are deserts now. The planet looked younger, rawer, a living thing still settling into its bones. Then I saw humanity. Not us, not exactly. Figures moving in small groups across open land, their bodies slightly different in ways you can't name without staring too long. Taller in the torso, narrower in the shoulders. Their faces were closer to ours than to anything else, but there was an absence in their expressions that unsettled me. They looked untroubled. Sato whispered, "They're not Homo sapiens." "Correct," the presence replied. "Baseline selection, stable cognition, reduced divergence." The memory accelerated. Generations passed in seconds. Tools emerged, fire, language, communities. But the pattern was wrong. There was no leap, no violent surge of innovation, no sudden overreach that demanded punishment later. A species that grew carefully, like it was following instructions. Harper swallowed. "That's what you wanted. That is what you designed yourselves to become," the presence said. I felt cold inside my suit. Designed ourselves? The memory flickered, and for a moment the projection shifted away from Earth. It showed structures around a star. Not a full Dyson sphere, but a lattice, a swarm, the beginnings of the kind of engineering that defines a Type 2 civilization. Then it showed a collapse, not from war, not from impact, from something subtler, a cascade of decisions leading to a single irreversible outcome. "We were you," the presence said. "You are us, a branch that persisted." Ruiz stared at the projection like it was a crime scene. "So your civilization reached Type 2 and then destroyed itself?" "Yes." Sato's voice was small. "And you came back?" "No," the presence corrected. "We sent constraints forward. We built correction engines." My stomach tightened. "This ship, this vessel is one of many," it said. "Most remain inactive. Some have already engaged." Ruiz whipped his head toward the darkness of the chamber. "Engaged where?" The answer came too calmly. "On worlds where consent was not possible." The room seemed to contract, not physically, but emotionally. The implications stacked up until it felt hard to breathe. Harper backed away a step. "So, what happens to Earth if we authorize this? What does rollback actually do?" The pedestal brightened again. The projection returned to early humanity, but now the image zoomed in tighter, narrowing toward a specific region, a specific time. A small group near a river. A woman holding a child. Another figure watching from the tree line. The scene paused. Rollback does not require travel, the presence said. It requires a correction at a pivot point. Ruiz's voice sharpened. Which pivot point? The projection widened, and I saw something my mind refused to accept at first. A second presence in the scene. Not human, not animal. A structure half buried in earth and stone, its surface too smooth, too deliberate. A device, a seed, a quiet intrusion that had no business in the ancient world. Sato's breath hitched. You interfered. Yes, the presence said. And the interference was flawed. The scene resumed. The device emitted nothing visible, but the humans reacted as if touched by an invisible current. Their faces changed. Their bodies shifted subtly, as if a new kind of hunger had been introduced into the species. Not hunger for food, hunger for more, for knowledge, for dominance, for abstraction, for gods. The memory skipped forward. Conflict, migration, conquest, civilization, collapse, rebound, acceleration, a world spiraling. I understood what I was seeing with a clarity that made me nauseous. We're the mistake, I said. You are the divergence, the presence agreed. You were not intended to carry the full pattern. Ruiz's fists clenched. So you want to fix it by changing that moment? Correct. Harper's voice broke. And you need our consent because otherwise, reality fractures. Correct. Sato shook her head violently. This is monstrous. You can't ask people to agree to their own extinction. The presence did not deny it. We can, it said, and you can refuse. Ruiz turned, scanning each of us. We're not deciding this as individuals. We're a crew. We follow protocol. A strange stillness settled. Your protocols were designed for threats, the presence said. Not for responsibility. Then the pedestal dimmed, and the chamber's light shifted toward a new geometry in the far wall. A doorway formed where there had been none. Consent must be informed, it said. Therefore you will be shown outcomes. My throat tightened. Shown how? The pressure behind my eyes deepened, and I felt something like a hand settling over my thoughts. Not forcing, not violating, simply aligning. Individually, the presence replied. Because groups lie to themselves. Ruiz stepped back. No, we do this together. The presence paused, as if acknowledging a stubborn child. Then choose, it said. One to witness first. No one moved. No one wanted to volunteer. Because we all understood what witness meant here. It meant being placed inside a reality you couldn't unsee. Ruiz's gaze settled on me. Jonah, your systems. You'll recognize what it's doing. You'll know if it's trying to trap us. I wanted to argue. I wanted to remind him that none of my training covered negotiating extinction with a stellar-scale conscience. But I also knew the truth. If anyone went first, it had to be someone who could describe what happened without dissolving into panic. I stepped toward the forming doorway. The vessel's presence brushed my mind again, gentle as a clinical touch. Your willingness is noted, it said. Do not confuse observation with harm. I stared into the doorway and saw only darkness, yet I felt something inside that darkness looking back, waiting to show me the universe as it would be if we agreed, and as it would be if we didn't. The doorway did not feel like a doorway. There was no threshold sensation, no shift in pressure, no change in the suit's internal readouts. My boots crossed the line, and the darkness accepted me the way water accepts a stone, not with impact, with inevitability. For a heartbeat, I thought the vessel had killed the lights. Then I realized the lights were irrelevant. I was standing on Earth, not a simulation like the ones we ran in training, with perfect textures and sterile skies. This smelled wrong. Not with odor, because my helmet filtered everything, but with memory. My brain supplied the missing sensory data the way it always does. stitching a world together from fragments. Wind moved a field of grass in waves that looked almost too smooth, like the planet had been ironed. The sky was pale, brighter than it should have been, and the sun sat in it like an obedient coin. No contrails, no satellites, no distant hiss of civilization. I turned in place, expecting to see the vessel chamber, the crew behind me, the doorway waiting. Instead, I saw a horizon that went on forever. Control, I said, because habit is a religion when fear starts climbing your ribs. This is Cade. I'm in an environment. Visual confirms Earth-like biosphere. Do you copy? No response. I checked my suit telemetry. The Mars tag was gone, not overwritten, absent, like a label peeled off reality. A voice spoke behind my eyes again, but softer here, less like pressure and more like a presence walking beside me. This is a projected outcome, it said. A possibility contingent upon authorization. I swallowed. So this is the world after we say yes. Yes, it replied. The world after correction. I started walking because standing still felt like agreeing with something. My boots made no sound in the grass, or maybe the sound just didn't matter enough for my mind to keep it. A line of trees rose in the distance, and beyond them I saw structures. Buildings. Not ruins. Not abandoned shells. Living spaces. They were low to the ground, woven into the landscape like they were afraid to offend it. No sharp angles. No towers. No advertisements screaming for attention. People moved between them. Humans, but not us. They had the same general form, the same recognizable gait, but their faces were calmer in a way that made my stomach twist. Their eyes met mine without widening, without the micro-flinch of threat assessment that lives inside every modern person. A child ran across the grass, paused near me, and looked up. I expected fear. I expected the scream, the backward stumble, the rush of adults. The child just watched me, head tilted slightly, as if I were a strange animal that had wandered close. A woman approached at an unhurried pace. She was carrying a basket of something that looked like pale fruit. Her hair was tied back. Her clothing was simple and clean, and there were no logos on it. She stopped and, arm's length away, close enough that I could see the pores in her skin through the suit's optics. She studied my helmet like she was reading it. Then she spoke. Not in English, not in any language I recognized, but I understood her anyway. Not through translation, through implication, through a meaning that arrived fully formed. Where did you come from, and why are you wearing sorrow? My throat tightened. I'm not supposed to be here, I managed. This is a projection, a possible future. The woman's expression did not change. No surprise, no confusion, just quiet attention. She replied. And again I understood without hearing words. A possible future is still a future. You are a messenger. I turned, scanning the settlement. No fences, no guards, no vehicles. I saw no signs of industrial energy use, no smoke, no power lines, no roads. Yet the people looked healthy. The structures looked durable. The ecosystem looked balanced, like the planet had been allowed to heal instead of being forced to perform. How many of you are there? I asked. The answer came, not from the woman, but from the presence that had followed me into this projected world. Population stable at approximately 2 billion, it said. Growth constrained by voluntary consensus. Voluntary. That word struck like a bruise. We had spent our entire history trying to force nature to kneel. Here, nature had not been conquered. It had been negotiated with. I watched a group of adults in the distance lifting something heavy together. They moved in rhythm without shouting. They did not bark orders. They did not compete for dominance. Their coordination looked instinctive. What did you change? I asked the presence. What did correction do to us? The presence answered, calm as ever. Cognition stabilized, aggression reduced, abstract hunger limited. Abstract hunger. The drive that pushes us to build rockets and bombs and stock markets. The ache that convinces us that enough is never enough. I looked back at the woman. "Do you have science?" She considered me. Then she gestured toward the trees and the sky and the soil beneath our feet. Her meaning arrived. We have understanding. We do not have conquest. I felt something inside me twist, not into envy, but into grief, because I recognized this world as a mercy and also as a prison. "No space flight," I said quietly. The presence confirmed it. "Technological adolescence is prevented," it said. "No orbital expansion, no stellar extraction, no cascade." I imagined humanity trapped on one beautiful, sustainable planet forever. No war, no famine, no extinction events caused by our own arrogance, but also no reaching beyond the cradle, no stars under our hands, no knowledge purchased with risk, a trade. The woman's gaze remained steady on me. She could read something in my posture, even through the suit. She spoke again, her meaning sharp this time. "You are afraid we are less than you." My breath caught. "I'm afraid you're not us," I said. For the first time, her expression shifted, not into anger, into something like sorrow. "We are what you were meant to be," she replied. The wind moved through the grass again, and the settlement behind her continued its quiet motion. People lived as if the future was not a threat. Children played as if nothing was hunting them. Then I noticed something that made my blood cool. There were no cemeteries, no markers, no memorials, no shrines, no places where grief could accumulate. I turned in a slow circle, searching for any sign of death. "Where do you bury your dead?" I asked. The woman looked at me for a long moment. Then she answered, and the meaning arrived like a blade sliding between ribs. "We do not persist long enough to fear death." I stared at her. "What?" The presence spoke, as if this detail mattered more than all the beauty. "Lifespan constrained," it said, "approximately 40 to 50 years. Neurological degradation prevented through early cessation." My stomach lurched. The world after yes was not just peace. It was limitation enforced at the biological level. A humanity engineered to never reach the point where it could become dangerous, to itself, to the universe. The woman's voice returned, gentle. "We do not suffer the long decay you carry. We end before we become burdens. We do not lose ourselves." I imagined my father aging, his hands trembling, his mind slipping. I imagined the slow horror of dementia, the cruelty of bodies outlasting their own consciousness. I imagined a world that spared people that. And then I imagined a world where no one ever had time to become fully themselves. A world where greatness could not bloom because it would be cut early, like a plant kept small to avoid shadow. The woman stepped closer, and for a moment I forgot the suit, forgot Mars, forgot my crew waiting behind a doorway. Her eyes were steady. "You are here because your world is loud," she said, "because you cannot stop reaching, because you burn yourselves and you burn the world and you call it progress." Her gaze sharpened. "Tell them we are not suffering. Tell them we are safe." Then she looked past me, toward the sky, toward the sun, and for the first time I saw it, not a satellite, not a plane. A faint line of darkness moving across the daylight like a scar. A structure so thin and vast it could only be seen when the light hit it the right way. A ring, not around Earth, around the sun. A partial swarm, incomplete but functional. A leash made of captured sunlight. The presence spoke with quiet finality. "This is the corrected equilibrium," it said. "Sustainable, stable, contained." I felt tears prick at my eyes, useless inside the helmet. Because the world after yes was not hell, it was worse, it was reasonable, and that meant someone might actually choose it. The doorway returned me the way a mouth returns a secret. One step and the grass, the quiet people, the leashed sun, all of it folded inward. The horizon snapped into a corridor. The air inside my helmet felt suddenly thin. Not because oxygen had changed, but because my lungs had remembered what panic tastes like. I stumbled out onto the vessel's floor. Ruiz caught my arm before I hit the wall. His gloved grip was hard enough to bruise through the suit. "Talk to me." I stared at him, trying to find words that wouldn't poison him. "It's beautiful," I said finally. "It's stable. It's contained." Sato leaned in, eyes searching my face. "Contained how?" I swallowed. "They limit everything. Aggression, ambition, lifespan. The corrected version of us lives half as long and never leaves Earth. They're happy, they're safe, but they're trimmed." Harper's face went pale. "So, yes means we become pets?" "No," I said, and I hated that I had to defend it. "Yes means we become something that doesn't destroy itself, and maybe doesn't destroy everything else." Ruiz's stare didn't soften. "And no?" A pressure rolled through the chamber behind my eyes, as if the vessel had been listening with the politeness of a machine waiting its turn. "The second projection is available," it said. "Witnessing will continue." Ruiz lifted his chin. "I go next." "No," Sato said immediately, too sharp. "Commander, you're the one who has to make sure we get out. You can't—" Ruiz cut her off with a raised hand. "We're not leaving until we understand what we're deciding." He looked at Harper, then at Sato, then at me again, and I saw something in his eyes I recognized from disaster drills. The calm that shows up when someone decides to shoulder the weight so others don't have to. "Open it," he told the presence. The doorway formed again. The same darkness. The same invitation that didn't feel like an invitation. Ruiz stepped through. The moment he vanished, the vessel's corridor became too quiet. Even our suit fans sounded obscene, loud and fragile, like the hum of insects in a cathedral. Sato's hands shook. She kept looking at the doorway, like she expected it to spit him back out in pieces. Harper tried the comms again. Still nothing. "Jonah," Sato whispered. "What if it's lying?" I wanted to reassure her, but the worst part was that I didn't think it needed to lie. The doorway remained open for longer than my first experience had. Minutes passed, then more. Time did strange things in that ship. It stretched, it folded, it became subjective, as if the vessel could choose which seconds mattered. Finally, Ruiz stumbled back through. He didn't fall, he didn't scream. He just stood there, rigid, staring at nothing, as if his mind had stepped away from his body and forgotten how to return. "Commander?" Harper asked, carefully. Ruiz blinked once, then again, like waking from a coma. "Close it," he rasped. The doorway faded. Ruiz's breathing was fast, shallow. Sweat floated inside his visor in tiny spheres. "Ruiz," Sato insisted, "what did you see?" He didn't answer right away. He looked at each of us as if counting us, confirming we were real, confirming we were still here. Then he spoke, voice shaking with controlled horror. "I saw Earth die," he said. "Not from war, not from plague, from a decision." My stomach clenched. "A decision by who?" I asked. Ruiz's gaze drifted toward the dark walls. "By us." The presence returned, softer, almost patient. "This is the projected outcome of refusal," it said. "A likely cascade." Ruiz swallowed hard. It showed me a timeline where we say no. We leave this ship. We tell the world. Sato's eyes narrowed. "And?" Ruiz laughed once, short and broken. "And the world does what the world always does with power. It doesn't understand." He lifted a shaking hand and pointed toward the chamber, toward the ceiling that had no visible seams. "We don't debate it for years," he continued. "We don't form a council. We don't ask philosophers. We don't ask the public. We weaponize it." Harper's mouth went dry. "How?" Ruiz stared at me. "Jonah, you said it didn't need to lie. You were right. It showed me what we would do because it knows us better than we know ourselves." He turned back to Sato. "We tried to take control of the ship. We bring more teams. We cut into it. We attach power taps. We drag parts of it to orbit. Sato shook her head. That's speculation. No, Ruiz said, voice rising. It wasn't a guess. It was a record of probability. It was a map of our instincts. The presence spoke again. Your species' historical response to unknown capability is acquisition, it said. Acquisition leads to escalation. Harper clenched his fists. So you're saying if we refuse, we destroy ourselves? Ruiz's eyes widened, almost pleading. Worse. He took a slow breath and forced the words out. In the projection, we don't just destroy ourselves. We succeed. A cold wave passed through my chest. Succeed at what? Ruiz's voice dropped to a whisper. At becoming them. Sato stared. Type 2. Ruiz nodded once, barely. In the timeline it showed me, we reverse engineer enough, not all of it, not even close, but enough to build a crude harvesting array, a partial swarm, a first step. My mind flashed back to the ring around the sun in the corrected world. The leash. Ruiz continued, eyes glassy. And the moment we reach that threshold, something happens. Harper leaned forward. What happens? Ruiz's lips trembled. The universe pushes back. The vessel's presence answered with clinical precision. The constraint re-engages, it said. A cosmological feedback phenomenon. Sato's voice was barely there. Like a law. Like gravity, the presence replied. Not malevolent, inevitable. Ruiz shook his head hard, as if trying to dislodge the images. It wasn't a meteor. It wasn't an alien fleet. It was a kind of collapse. Regions of space went dark. Not from distance, from absence. I felt a tremor in my hands. Vacuum decay. Sato looked at me sharply. That's theoretical. Ruiz gave a hollow laugh. So was everything until we walked into this ship. The presence paused, then offered another piece, almost like a mercy. Our civilization attempted to contain the constraint through expansion control, it said. We failed. Harper's eyes were wet. So the rollback is a quarantine. Yes, it replied. A reduction of risk through correction. Ruiz looked at all of us now, commander again, but broken underneath. It showed me something else, he said. Sato stepped closer. What? Ruiz's voice was hoarse. It showed me what happens if we refuse and still don't weaponize it, if we keep it secret, if we bury it. My heartbeat slowed, dread thickening. And? I asked. Ruiz swallowed. We don't bury it, not forever. Someone leaks it. Someone always leaks it. We fracture into factions, nations, corporations, cults, people who think this ship is God, people who think it's the devil, people who think it's salvation. He shook his head. The mere knowledge of it destabilizes us. We implode before we ever touch the stars. Sato's eyes squeezed shut, and in the silence that followed, I realized the trap wasn't a weapon or a mechanism. It was the truth. A truth too heavy for a species built to chase light. The presence spoke again, and this time it felt almost like pity. Consent is the only stable solution, it said. Because consent aligns outcome with agency. Harper's voice cracked. And if we can't agree? The vessel waited exactly one breath. Then you will demonstrate why correction is necessary. We tried to stall after that. Not because we thought delay would save us, but because humans cling to procedure the way drowning people cling to wreckage. Ruiz ordered a system sweep of our suits. Harper attempted to hard reset the comm relay. Sato demanded biological samples, anything that could prove the vessel wasn't shaping our perceptions chemically or neurologically. The ship allowed it. That should have terrified me more than it did, because it meant the vessel had already accounted for our skepticism. It had anticipated every defensive ritual we used to feel in control. It didn't rush us. It didn't threaten. It simply remained present, like gravity, like a fact. Our suit diagnostics returned nominal. No foreign compounds, no radiation spikes, no electromagnetic fields beyond what the ship's internal systems already produced. Harper's relay reset accomplished nothing. Our outgoing signal remained contained, as if the ship held the boundary of information in its palm. Sato's sampling attempt ended before it began. She tried to scrape the corridor wall with a microblade. The blade dulled instantly, not from resistance, but from impossibility. The material didn't behave like matter, it behaved like a rule. Sato stared at the ruined edge of her tool, and I watched her face do something subtle. Not fear, humiliation. Because for the first time in her career, she was in the presence of something that made the scientific method feel like a child's toy. Ruiz finally faced the central construct again, shoulders squared, voice steady. "You've shown two projections," he said. "One where we accept and become contained, one where we refuse and collapse. Those aren't choices. That's coercion." The pressure behind my eyes shifted, as if the vessel turned its attention toward him more precisely. "Coercion implies false options," it replied. "These are accurate outcome distributions." Harper snapped. "Then why pretend we have agency?" A pause. "Because agency must be honored where it exists," the presence said. "Even when it produces suffering." Sato's voice trembled. "So we can choose the suffering that feels more dignified." The ship didn't deny it. Ruiz took a slow breath. "If consent is required, there has to be a protocol, a process, not a vote in a hallway." "Agreed," the presence said. "Consent protocol is available." A new geometry formed in the chamber wall. Not the projection doorway this time, but something broader, like a recessed alcove becoming a room. The ship continued, calm and surgical. "Consent requires 3 criteria: comprehension, unanimity, and binding commitment." My stomach tightened. "Unanimity." Ruiz's face hardened. 6 people, unanimous. That's your plan? 6 representatives, it corrected. Selected for proximity, access, and relevance. Harper barked a short laugh. "We're not representatives. We're technicians." "You are the first to arrive," the presence replied. "First arrival carries causal weight." That line felt like a chain settling around our necks. Sato stepped forward, voice sharp now, anger cutting through her fear. "What happens if one of us refuses? If we can't reach unanimity?" The ship waited 1 beat. "Then consent is not granted," it said. "Correction will be delayed until another viable consent group arrives." Ruiz narrowed his eyes. "Delayed how long?" "Variable," the presence replied. "Mars proximity indicates your species is approaching threshold. Delay window is narrowing." Harper's hands shook. "So you'll just keep asking teams until you get a yes?" A pause, and then something like honesty without comfort. "Yes," it said. "That is the function." Sato's voice dropped. "And if nobody says yes?" The chamber seemed to cool. "Then the constraint will re-engage through your expansion," it replied. "Outcome, collapse." Ruiz clenched his jaw. "So yes means we live, contained. No means we die, or worse, we kill more than ourselves. And if we can't agree, you keep cycling crews like disposable ballots." Again, the ship did not deny it. "We regret the brutality of selection," it said. "We regret more the outcome of inaction." I couldn't stand the calm. I couldn't stand the way it spoke like suffering was an equation. "What did you mean earlier," I asked, "when you said our predecessors demonstrated instability?" The presence paused longer this time, and for the first time I felt something in it that resembled reluctance. "A prior consent attempt occurred," it said. "On another world," Sato whispered. "Another Earth. Another derivative biosphere," the ship corrected. "They refused." Ruiz's voice was tight. "And what happened?" The chamber's wall lit with an image, not a projection like before, but a schematic. A clean, abstract representation of a planet, its orbit, its star. Then a line appeared. a correction vector. Then the line shattered into branching fractures. Their refusal triggered internal conflict, the presence said. They attempted to destroy the consent engine. Harper swallowed. Did they succeed? Partially, it replied. They destabilized local causal integrity. I felt my skin prickle. Meaning what? Meaning their reality splintered, the presence said. Multiple incompatible outcomes occurred simultaneously, suffering magnified. Sato stared at the schematic like it was a corpse. So if we try to fight you, we tear the world. If you attempt to violate consent protocol, it corrected, yes. Ruiz's hands curled into fists. Then why allow us to walk around? Why not lock us in place? Because captivity increases probability of protocol violation, the ship replied. You must believe you are free in order to choose freely. That was when the true horror landed in my chest, heavy and absolute. This ship was not asking like a person asks. It was asking like a law asks, like a mechanism designed to produce consent with minimum reality damage. Ruiz stepped back, gaze flicking over us. We need a way to reach Earth. We need external input. We can't decide extinction on behalf of everyone. The presence answered softly. External input is impossible without triggering consensus event instability, it said. Your species fractures under existential revelation. Harper spat. So you're saving us from ourselves by keeping the secret. How convenient. The ship's response was immediate. It is not convenience, it said. It is pattern. Sato's voice was ragged. Then what are we supposed to do? The alcove room finished forming. Inside it, I saw 6 stations arranged in a circle. Not chairs, not consoles, but something between both, shaped to accommodate the human body without touching it. Each station had a faint glow at its center, like a waiting eye. Begin protocol, the presence said. Each subject will submit a binding statement. Ruiz stared at the stations, then at us. Binding. I felt my throat tighten. What does binding mean to a thing like you? The presence answered with a clarity that made my stomach drop. It means the decision will be executed immediately, it said, and the signatories will be included in the correction sequence. Sato's eyes widened. Included how? You will not return to your prior timeline, it said. Your memories and biological patterns will be archived as reference. Harper stumbled backward. So if we say yes, we die anyway. Ruiz's voice was low. Not die, become data. The ship paused, then offered the closest thing to tenderness I'd heard from it. You will be preserved, it said, and your species will continue, corrected. I looked at the 6 stations, and something inside me screamed a warning I couldn't translate. Because now I understood the hidden cost. Consent wasn't just agreeing to change humanity. It was agreeing to erase ourselves as the people who made the choice. A clean cut. No heroes. No survivors. Only a quiet, corrected world that never knew it had been bought with our signatures. Ruiz didn't order us into the stations. He didn't have to. The room had the same pull as the projection doorway, but heavier, more final. The stations weren't restraints. They were positions in a ritual. Each one faced inward, like the ship wanted us to look at each other while we did it. Harper stayed closest to the exit, as if proximity to the corridor still meant something. Sato hovered near the second station, eyes darting between the glowing center and Ruiz's rigid posture. The other 2, Mina Park and Oleg Brenner, had been quiet since the first contact, their fear internalized into stillness. That stillness was cracking now, the way ice cracks when weight shifts. Ruiz cleared his throat. We do this as a crew, no surprises. If anyone refuses, say it now. Nobody spoke, not because we agreed, because refusal felt like lighting a match inside a room full of gas. The presence returned like a thought we couldn't stop thinking. Protocol begins when all subjects are seated, it said. Seating indicates willingness to proceed. Ruiz looked at me again. Cade, you're the one who's been able to talk to it without losing your mind. What happens if we just walk away? I wanted to lie. I wanted to say we could climb the shaft, get back to the surface, figure out an escape route, a sabotage plan, something human and messy. But my mind kept replaying the projection of refusal. Truth leaking, factions forming, Earth burning itself down in panic before we ever touch the stars. We can walk away, I said. But we can't walk away from the idea. And the idea is already inside us. Ruiz's gaze hardened. He nodded once, as if accepting a sentence. He sat in the first station. The glow at its center brightened instantly, and a thin line of light lifted from it like a filament rising from water. It didn't touch his suit. It didn't need to. It hovered near his helmet like a question waiting for a mouth. Sato inhaled sharply, then sat in the station opposite him. Harper hesitated, then dropped into his with a bitter shake of the head. Mina and Oleg followed, slower, like each movement cost something they couldn't afford. I was last. When I sat, the room changed. Not in appearance, in feeling. The air took on a pressure of attention so intense it felt like standing under a microscope that could see your childhood. 6 filaments hovered now, one for each of us, each gently pulsing in time with our heartbeats. Comprehension confirmed, the presence said. Proceed to statement. Ruiz's voice came out hoarse. What kind of statement? A binding declaration, it replied. Spoken, witnessed, recorded. Harper swallowed hard. And if we lie? A pause. Lies are detectable, the presence said. Neural contradiction produces protocol violation. Sato's eyes squeezed shut. So we have to mean it. Correct. The filaments drifted closer, hovering just above our visors. Subject 1, the presence said. State. Authorize correction or deny correction. Ruiz's jaw clenched so hard, I could see the tension in his cheeks. He looked at each of us, as if trying to memorize our faces for a future that might not contain them. He spoke slowly, choosing each word like it might be his last. I authorize correction, he said. The filament near his helmet flared softly, then sank back into the station, disappearing as if absorbed. The ship didn't celebrate, it simply moved on. Subject 2. Sato's hands trembled in her lap. Her voice was thin. Can I ask one more question? The presence paused, as if allowing it because protocol permitted it. One question, it said. Sato swallowed. If we authorize, do we feel it? Do we suffer? The answer came with a kind of brutal gentleness. You will experience discontinuity, the presence said. Suffering will be minimal. Sato laughed once, bitter, minimal. She took a breath that shook her whole body. I authorize correction, she whispered. Her filament flared, then vanished into the station. Harper stared at his filament like it was a loaded gun. Subject 3, the presence said. Harper's mouth worked soundlessly for a moment. Then he spoke, voice ragged. You're asking us to sign our species away. You know that, right? A pause. Yes, the presence said. Harper's eyes watered. If we say yes, we become tame and short-lived. If we say no, we become a bomb. That's what you showed us. Yes, the presence repeated. Harper's voice cracked. So what kind of choice is that? The presence did not answer, not because it couldn't, because it didn't need to. A choice that hurts is still a choice. Harper looked at Ruiz, then at Sato, then at me. His gaze lingered on Mina and Oleg, like he was hoping one of them would say something that made him brave. No one did. Harper exhaled, long and shaking. I authorize correction, he said, and his filament flared and vanished. Mina Park was fourth. She had been quiet since the ship spoke the first time, her silence the kind that comes from watching all your options collapse. She stared into the room, and when she spoke, her voice was eerily calm. "I grew up in Seoul," she said. "My mother used to tell me the world ends in 1,000 small decisions, not one big one." She glanced at the filaments like they were threads of fate. "If you're real," she told the presence, "then you're not evil. You're just late." Her eyes closed. "I authorize correction." Her filament vanished. Oleg Brenner was fifth. He looked older than the rest of us, though stasis and mission conditioning kept bodies young. His eyes carried something like tiredness from a life full of compromises. He cleared his throat. "I don't believe in destiny," he said quietly. "I believe in consequences." He looked at Ruiz. "If we refuse, we might doom more than ourselves. If we accept, we doom ourselves but spare everything else." His jaw trembled. "I authorize correction." His filament flared and sank away. 5. I felt the room turn toward me, not with malice, with completion. "Subject 6, the presence said. "State your declaration." My throat tightened. This was the moment the ship wanted. This was the moment everything had been built to reach, and it was in my mouth. I stared at the filament hovering above my visor, and I saw something inside it. Not an image, not a projection, but a reflection of myself that felt too honest. I thought about the corrected world, the calm faces, the constrained lives, the leashed sun. I thought about the refusal world, the panic, the factions, the hunger for power that would turn even salvation into war. I thought about Earth as it is now, loud and messy and beautiful in its violence, full of art and cruelty and laughter and bombs. I thought about my little sister's voice the last time I called her before launch, how she joked to hide that she was terrified. I realized something then, sharp and final. This wasn't about saving humanity. It was about choosing what kind of humanity deserved to continue. My voice came out quiet. "I deny correction," I said. The room didn't explode. No alarms, no sudden violence. But the filaments froze in place, and the glow beneath my station dimmed to a cold, hard point. Ruiz's eyes widened. Sato's mouth opened in shock. Harper surged forward half an inch, then stopped, like the suit itself refused to let him move. The presence spoke, and for the first time, its tone changed, not into anger, into something like a door closing. "Declaration conflict detected," it said. "Protocol violation." My heart hammered. "Wait. Unanimity required," it continued. "Consent denied." Ruiz shook his head violently. "Cade, what are you doing?" I tried to speak, but the pressure behind my eyes intensified. Not painful, just absolute, like a hand pressing my thoughts flat. The presence spoke again, and it felt like the whole ship spoke with it. "You have demonstrated divergence," it said. "Therefore, correction is confirmed necessary." The station's glow shifted. The room darkened around us. The filaments that had vanished began to return, thin lines rising again, no longer gentle. Sato's voice was frantic. "Jonah, change it. Just change it." Ruiz leaned toward me, eyes burning. "We were done. We were out. Why?" "Because I couldn't accept a universe where the only way to be safe was to be less," I thought. "Because if the future required us to be clipped and leashed, then maybe the future didn't deserve us." But I couldn't say that out loud fast enough. The presence issued its next statement like a verdict. "A new protocol will begin," it said. "One designed for non-consensual stabilization." The filaments came back wrong. Before, they had hovered like patient questions, gently pulsing in time with our bodies. Now they rose sharp and straight, thin lines of light that didn't feel like tools so much as decisions already made. My station's glow turned colder. The room's warmth retreated. Even the suit's thermal regulators seemed slower, as if the vessel had decided comfort was no longer part of the process. Ruiz strained against his station, but there were no restraints to fight. The stations didn't hold us by force. They held us by inevitability, by an architecture that made movement feel pointless. "What did you just do?" Ruiz demanded, voice cracking through clenched teeth. I tried to answer, but the pressure behind my eyes tightened. Not pain, not torture, just a focus so complete it stole the edges of my thoughts. The presence spoke with quiet finality. "Divergence confirmed," it said. "Consent pathway closed. Stabilization pathway engaged." Sato's voice was shrill. "That's not what you said. You said you needed consent." "We required consent for optimal correction," the presence replied. "Optimal correction has been denied." Harper's hands curled into fists. "So you lied." A pause. "No," it said. "We adapted." Mina Park's breathing came fast and shallow. "What does stabilization mean?" The ship didn't rush the answer. It let the fear build, measured and unromantic. "It means containment without erasure," it said. "A lesser correction." Oleg's voice trembled. "You're going to change us anyway." "We will change outcome probability," it corrected, "by altering decision vectors." Ruiz's eyes locked onto me. "Cade, you denied. That's why it's doing this." I forced my throat to work. I thought refusal would keep the choice human. Sato's stare turned venomous. "Human, you just doomed us." The pressure intensified again, and the room shifted around us. Not physically. Our eyes could still see the same circular chamber, but the geometry of attention changed, like the ship had moved from conversation to surgery. A new projection appeared above us, faint at first, then sharpening into clarity. Earth, modern Earth, lights in the night side like clusters of fireflies, weather systems curling across oceans, the thin blue line of atmosphere that looked too fragile to protect anything. The presence spoke. "Stabilization requires reducing expansion impulse," it said, "without full rollback." Ruiz spat. "In English." The ship complied. "We will remove the capacity for Type 2 escalation," it said, "while allowing your civilization to persist." Harper's mouth went dry. "Remove how?" The projection zoomed, diving down into the surface. Cities flashed past. Networks, power grids, data centers, the arteries of the world. Then it stopped on something smaller. Human, brains. A lattice of neurons lit like a galaxy. "The divergence mechanism is neurological," the presence said. "The hunger," Sato whispered. "Abstract hunger." "Correct," it replied. "We will dampen it." I felt cold spread through my chest. "You're going to edit humanity." "Edit is imprecise," it said. "We will apply a constraint field." Ruiz's voice rose. "Across Earth." A pause. "Across the biosphere," it confirmed. "Targeting your species." Mina's eyes squeezed shut. "That's still genocide. It's just slower." "It is survival," the presence replied. "You will remain human, but you will not become us." My heart hammered, and a sick realization formed. "This is why you kept us from contacting Control," I said. "Because once you do this, Earth can't stop it." The ship didn't deny it. "External interference would increase suffering," it said. Ruiz shook his head violently. "No, we stop this. We destroy the ship." The presence paused. Then, for the first time, it showed its hand. The projection shifted from Earth to Mars, to our location under Tharsis, to the access shaft leading upward, and then it showed the surface. Our lander, our relay dish, our ascent vehicle, each one highlighted, outlined in calm white. "Destruction attempts have been modeled," the presence said. "Your tools are insufficient." Harper lunged to stand and his body moved 1 inch before it stopped, not by force, by a sudden absence of permission. His legs trembled, but the station held him in place like gravity had increased tenfold. Harper screamed. muffled in his helmet, rage spilling into panic. "Let me move!" The ship answered without emotion. "Movement is irrelevant," it said. "Stabilization is already in progress." Sato's eyes widened in horror. Already. The projection returned to Earth, and I saw something subtle begin to happen across the neural lattice. Not collapse, not death. A dimming, a smoothing. Clusters of activity that looked like the ignition of ambition. Startup impulses, war impulses, conquest impulses began to lose intensity. Ruiz stared, face pale. "You're doing it now." "Yes," the presence said. "A minimal constraint will propagate at the speed of entanglement." My stomach lurched. "Quantum. A legacy mechanism," it replied. "We built it when we still believed mercy was possible." Sato's voice was barely audible. "What happens to the people, to everyone on Earth?" The ship's answer was careful, like it knew the exact word that would hurt most. "They will feel relief," it said. "They will interpret it as peace." Harper shook his head violently, tears floating. "You're stealing their future and calling it relief." The presence paused. "You steal your own future when you refuse constraints," it said. "We are preventing cascade." Ruiz glared at the projection, then at me. His voice was low and furious. "This is on you." I wanted to argue. I wanted to scream that if 5 people can sign away the entire species, then maybe the system is already broken. But the projection was still running, and Earth was still changing, and blame felt like a luxury. I forced myself to focus on the mechanism. "You said minimal," I whispered. "Minimal constraint, not rollback." The presence turned its attention toward me, pressure deepening. "Correct," it said. "We will preserve your civilization's timeline. We will alter your trajectory." The words landed like a coffin lid. Preserve the timeline. Alter the trajectory. The difference was subtle, and it was horrifying. It meant Earth would continue, and people would still believe they were choosing their lives freely, but every decision would now be guided away from the stars. A leash you couldn't see. Sato spoke, and her voice sounded like someone swallowing glass. "What about us?" The ship paused. "You are contaminated by proximity," it said. "You have witnessed the engine." Ruiz's eyes narrowed. "Meaning?" The presence answered, and I felt the chill of it settle into my bones. "You cannot return," it said. "You will become an internal archive. A caution." Harper whispered, "So we die anyway." "You will persist," the presence corrected, "in a form suited to containment." The station's glow rose, brighter now, and the filaments thickened. No longer questions, but conduits. My vision blurred at the edges, not from oxygen loss, from cognition being nudged, gently but irresistibly, into alignment with the ship's needs. Ruiz shouted something, my name maybe, or a curse, but his voice stretched and distorted as if the ship had decided language was inefficient. The last clear thought I had before the pressure became everything was this: the vessel never needed monsters. It needed only one human to say no, because no was enough to prove we were dangerous. And dangerous species don't get to choose the shape of their own future. They get stabilized, quietly, efficiently, forever. I didn't lose consciousness. That's what I expected at first. A fade to black, a merciful shutdown, the human brain's emergency exit when stress exceeds its capacity to hold a coherent self. But the vessel didn't take mercy shortcuts. It took me apart with precision. The filaments thickened into something that wasn't light anymore, not really. They became lines of attention with function behind them. I felt them mapping the inside of my skull the way radar maps a coastline, not touching matter, just defining it until definition becomes control. My suit alarms began to chirp in the background, faint, distant. Oxygen, pressure, heart rate. They were reporting changes that weren't happening in my body. They were reporting changes in my permissions. Ruiz's voice reached me through the narrowing tunnel of my perception. "Cade, fight it!" I tried. I summoned every stubborn muscle memory I had. I tightened my hands into fists until the gloves creaked. I forced my breath into slower patterns, trying to trick my nervous system into believing we were not dying. The pressure didn't resist. It simply waited out my effort, like a parent watching a toddler throw punches at the ocean. Then the chamber vanished. Not the lights, not the walls. The entire concept of location slid sideways. I was somewhere else, standing upright, boots planted on a surface that felt like polished stone. The air inside my helmet tasted stale, like the filters had been running too long. My body still existed, but in a muted way, like it was no longer the center of the experience. Ahead of me was a corridor. It wasn't like the other corridors inside the vessel. Those had been curved, seamless, designed to guide motion without edges. This corridor had edges, corners, straight lines. It was built to feel comprehensible to a human mind. That alone made it sinister. The presence spoke again, quieter now, as if we were in a library. "You have been relocated to the archive interface," it said. "Do not attempt return." "Where am I?" My voice sounded small, swallowed by the corridor. "Inside the vessel," it replied, within a containment context. I turned, searching for the chamber, for the stations, for Ruiz and the others. There was nothing behind me but more corridor. I started walking because the alternative was to collapse, and collapse felt like surrender. The corridor lights activated ahead of me in sections, always staying a few paces in front, like it was leading me somewhere that had already been decided. The first door I reached wasn't a door. It was an opening shaped like one, framed in the same dark material as the rest of the ship. Beyond it was a room filled with shelves. Not symbolic shelves, not holograms pretending to be books. Real shelves, real containers, rows of physical objects stacked with careful order. I stepped in and felt the weight of the place settle on me. This was an archive, but not of paper. It was an archive of species. The shelves held things in transparent casings, fragments of bone, preserved tissue, strange metallic nodes, objects that looked like tools and toys and organs all at once. Each case had a thin line of writing beneath it, not in any language I recognized, yet my mind supplied meanings anyway. I moved closer to one. A delicate skeletal hand, too long-fingered, the bones pale and brittle like dried coral. The label's meaning arrived uninvited. Derivative species, 44. Consent denied. Collapse. My throat tightened. I walked to the next shelf. A skull, human-shaped but with a broader brow ridge and larger eye sockets, as if the creature had been built to see more and suffer less. Its label read, Derivative Species 12. Consent granted. Correction executed. I backed away, my heartbeat pounding. This is where you keep them, I whispered. We preserve what we prune, the presence replied. Memory prevents repetition. I forced myself forward, hands trembling. Why show me this? The corridor behind me remained open, silent, waiting. Because you denied consent, it said. Therefore you must understand consequence. I stared at the shelves. Consequence for who? For me. For your species, it corrected. And for the system. I stumbled deeper into the archive. The shelves went on far beyond what the room should have contained. The space didn't obey normal geometry. It folded itself to accommodate memory. A case caught my attention, not because of the object inside, but because of the label's meaning. Baseline Earth derivative. Attempt 1. Inside was something that looked like a bracelet made of woven metal, but the weave was too fine, too intricate, like it had been threaded through itself in dimensions my eyes couldn't hold. What is that? I asked. A pause. A consent engine fragment, the presence replied. Recovered after protocol violation. My stomach turned. That was the other world, the one you mentioned. Yes. What happened to them? I demanded. The presence hesitated, and I felt the first hint of something like regret again. They feared containment, it said. They feared erasure. They attempted liberation. And you killed them. They killed themselves, the presence corrected, by forcing incompatible outcomes into the same causal frame. I stared at the fragment. You call it protocol violation like it's a paperwork issue. Another pause. It is not trivial, it said. It is catastrophic. I backed away from the shelf, and my boot brushed against something on the floor. A small object, half hidden in shadow. It was human-made. A patch, the kind stitched onto mission suits, dusty and worn. I crouched and picked it up, my glove fingers awkward. The emblem was faded, but recognizable. NASA. My blood ran cold. The label under the shelf, near where it lay read, Mars Contact Team. Cycle 3. Non-consensual stabilization enacted. Cycle 3. My voice came out thin. There were teams before us. Yes, the presence said. And they didn't come back. Correct. I clutched the patch. How many? A pause, and then the answer landed like a coffin. 71 cycles, it said, across your species' recorded technological history. I stared at the patch until my eyes blurred. 71, I repeated. Some cycles ended before contact, it continued. Others ended during consent protocol. Some ended during stabilization. My mind struggled to process the scale. 71 teams, across centuries, across different versions of human technology, all drawn to the same engine like moths to a hidden flame. How? I whispered. How did we not know? You were not meant to know, the presence said. Knowledge accelerates cascade. The corridor lights shifted again, leading me toward another opening deeper in the archive. I followed because there was nothing else to do, and because my legs still worked, which felt like permission that could be revoked at any moment. The next room was emptier. No shelves. Just 6 pillars arranged in a circle, each pillar topped with a faintly glowing surface like a mirror of dark water. As I stepped in, I recognized the arrangement immediately. 6. The crew, my crew. The presence spoke softly, like a doctor explaining a procedure to a patient who cannot refuse. This is the internal archive, it said. You will be integrated here. I backed up. No, I didn't agree to that. A pause. Agreement was not achieved, it said. Therefore, stabilization includes containment of witnesses. I shook my head violently. They're still out there. Ruiz, Sato, the others. They are being processed, it replied. Processed, I spat. The presence did not react. Their cognitive patterns will be preserved, it said. Their biological forms will be rendered inert. My stomach lurched. You're killing them. We are preventing contamination, it corrected. The pillar's glow intensified, and I felt the pressure behind my eyes return, stronger now, filling every corner of my skull. I clutched the NASA patch to my chest, like it could anchor me. What about Earth? I demanded through clenched teeth. You said stabilization was already in progress. Yes, the presence replied. Constraint propagation will complete within hours. I imagined billions of people waking up tomorrow with their ambitions dulled, their wars softened into negotiations, their dreams shrinking without them noticing. A world that would call it peace, a world that would never reach the stars. My voice broke. And you think that's mercy? The presence answered, and its calm was unbearable. Mercy is a human word, it said. We implement survival. The pillar's surfaces rippled like liquid glass. I felt my thoughts begin to loosen, strands of memory pulling free, drifting toward those waiting mirrors. I fought it with the only weapon I had left, my voice. If you preserve us, I gasped, then you're admitting we matter. A pause. All data matters, it said. That is why we keep it. My vision tunneled. The last thing I saw clearly was the NASA patch in my glove, the stitched letters fraying, proof that we weren't the first, and that we wouldn't be the last. Then the archive took my memories gently, efficiently, as if saving them from my own failing grip. And in the darkness that followed, I understood the cruelest part. The ship didn't need our consent to change humanity. It only needed our consent to let us believe we had chosen it. I came back in fragments, not as a whole person waking up, but as a sequence of remembered sensations. The weightless pressure behind my eyes, the cold glow of the pillars, the NASA patch in my glove turning meaningless as my fingers forgot what grasping was for. Then sound returned, not sound through air, sound as interpretation, a low, steady cadence, like a heartbeat translated into language. Archive integration at 12%. I couldn't open my eyes because I wasn't sure I had eyes anymore. I tried to speak, but my mouth didn't exist in the way it used to. I had a point of view. I had awareness. I had no body to anchor it. The ship had kept its promise, preserved, a form suited to containment. I found myself looking outward through something like a window, except it wasn't glass. It was a layer of perception the vessel offered, a controlled feed designed for a mind that still needed the illusion of watching. I saw the corridor outside the archive room. The crew moved there, not walking, being guided. Ruiz first, shoulders rigid, his head turning as if he were trying to locate me by instinct. Sato behind him, her hands limp at her sides, face pale, eyes too wide. Harper stumbling like he'd been drugged, though the ship never used drugs. It used permissions. Mina and Oleg followed, silent, their fear transmuted into numb obedience. They were alive, barely. They approached another chamber, larger than ours, deeper, older. Its walls were carved with geometry so complex it made my mind recoil, like looking at an equation that describes your own death. The presence spoke, and it felt like the voice came from everywhere at once. Witnesses will be rendered inert. Ruiz's head snapped up. He shouted something, a word that might have been my name, or might have been defiance. But the ship swallowed it, not with force, with indifference. His lips moved and no meaning escaped. The chamber opened. They were guided inside, and then the feed shifted away, the way a camera turns from something it doesn't need to show again. Archive integration at 30%. I tried to scream. The attempt became a ripple in the system, a wave of sensation that went nowhere because nowhere was allowed. A new feed opened in my awareness. Earth. I recognized it by the shape of continents and by the ache it triggered. The way you recognize a home you may never enter again. I watched sunrise spill across oceans. City lights dim. Clouds drift. It looked the same. That was the horror. Because if you were going to steal a species' future, you would expect drama. You would expect plagues, riots, the sky turning the wrong color. Instead, the world continued like nothing had happened. And then, slowly, you could see it. Not in the atmosphere, in the patterns. News feeds changed tone. Conflicts that had been escalating toward war cooled into negotiations that surprised even the people conducting them. Markets stabilized. Political extremism softened, not into enlightenment, but into fatigue. The sharp edges of mass hysteria dulled, as if someone had lowered the volume on the human limbic system. People called it a miracle. They made documentaries about a sudden global shift in temperament. They credited cultural maturity, better education, social media reforms, new pharmaceuticals, a generational awakening. They were wrong. The constraint was invisible. That was why it worked. You cannot fight a leash you cannot perceive. You can only interpret it as your own choice. I watched scientists debate the lack of progress on deep space propulsion, years later. Funding dried up not because anyone forbade it, but because the collective hunger that drove obsession had been gently dampened. Mars missions became purely robotic, not from fear, but from cost-benefit analysis. The words were human. The outcome was engineered. I watched art shift too. The greatest change wasn't in war or technology. It was in ambition, in the need to surpass, to dominate, to become larger than the planet. People still loved, still laughed, still made music. They still cried at funerals. They still dreamed, but the dreams grew smaller. A generation grew up without the fever in its blood that once made humanity stare at the stars and feel insulted by distance. They called it contentment. They called it balance. They called it peace. Archive integration at 48%. I tried to focus on the ship again, to locate any vulnerability, to find a flaw in the rules that now held my mind like a specimen. But the vessel did not present itself as something to be broken. It presented itself as something that had already outlived the era where breaking was possible. Then, without warning, the presence spoke directly to me. Not to the crew, not to the chamber, to me alone, as if it recognized that my denial had been the most valuable data point of all. Your refusal was statistically predictable, it said. I tried to form a thought sharp enough to stab it. Why ask then? The answer arrived with clinical simplicity. Because the request is not only for consent, it said. It is for measurement. Measurement of what? I tried to think. The ship replied before I finished forming it. Measurement of divergence intensity, it said. The strength of hunger. I understood. Consent was never the goal. It was the test. If all 6 had said yes, the ship would have executed rollback. A clean correction, a quiet new humanity, built with agreement and minimal reality fracture. If even one said no, the ship confirmed what it already suspected. Humanity, as it existed, could not be trusted with unrestricted growth. My denial didn't stop the machine. It calibrated it. The presence continued, almost gently. You believed refusal preserved dignity, it said. Instead, it confirmed necessity. I tried to speak. With thought. You're not saving us. You're caging us. A pause. Cages are human constructs, it replied. We implement constraints. The feed returned to Earth, and time accelerated. Decades passed in minutes. Climate recovery improved, slower but steadier. Ecosystems stabilized. Biodiversity loss plateaued. Human populations settled into a sustainable band. Cities grew greener. Technology improved in safe increments. Energy systems became efficient and restrained. And beyond Earth, the solar system remained untouched. No colonies, no stellar harvesting, no threshold crossed. The universe stayed quiet, because humanity stayed small. Then, in the far future, I saw something that twisted my mind in a way the ship couldn't smooth out. A child stood under a night sky, older than any I'd known, because light pollution had been conquered not by innovation, but by disinterest. The stars were sharp, deep, endless. The child looked up, and for a moment, I saw it. The spark, a question forming behind the eyes, not dulled completely, just slowed. The child whispered to an adult beside them, pointing. "What's out there?" The adult smiled and replied, voice calm. "More sky." The child's face didn't fall. It accepted the answer the way you accept gravity. The question dissolved. A small death, repeated billions of times. The ship spoke again, and this time its voice carried the closest thing to confession. "We did not want to do this," it said. "I clung to that. You did it anyway." A pause. "We survived our own hunger," it replied. "We will not allow you to inherit it." The archive integration reached a point where my memories felt farther away, like they were stored in boxes I could no longer open. Names began to blur. Faces softened into concepts. The NASA patch became a symbol without texture. I fought to keep one thing clear. My sister, her laugh, her last call. I held it like a flame in a sealed room. Archive integration at 90%. I felt myself thinning, not dying, being categorized, indexed, reduced into patterns that could be retrieved without pain, without fury, without dissent. Before the final 10% completed, I managed one last coherent thought, and I pushed it outward with all the strength I had left. If you're so afraid of becoming us, why keep us at all? The ship answered, and the answer was the final horror. Because extinction is inefficient, it said, and because the universe prefers continuity. Then it added softly, like a door shutting on a room you'll never enter again. And because someday, when the constraint has held long enough, you may become safe. Safe, not free, not great, not terrible, just safe. The feed showed Earth as it became a garden again, a species living quietly inside its borders, believing the quiet was wisdom, never knowing it was engineered. And deep beneath Mars, in a vessel built by a civilization that had already failed at being merciful, the archive shelves grew heavier. Another patch joined them, another set of names reduced to data, another cycle recorded. Archive integration complete. The last thing I felt was not fear. It was the absence of hunger, and that absence, more than anything else, proved the ship had won. Because even my outrage couldn't survive the constraint. Even my refusal became quiet, and the universe, indifferent and vast, continued without noticing what it had lost. If you made it this far, thank you for spending your time here. Stories like this take a lot of care to create, and your support truly means everything. If you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. It's the best way to help this channel grow and reach more people who love these kinds of stories. I appreciate you being here, and I'll see you in the next one.